Yo, this is Molecular. Welcome to another Patreon exclusive video. This one I'll be going over groove and rhythm and just everything to make your drums, like small little details about groovy drums and all of that, and getting a groove, and I guess you get the idea. So yeah, I've got a little loop just to start with. I've got one kick, one snare, one hat, just on the half beat, and we'll start from there, and then I'll show you stuff that you can use on top and put on top to kind of embellish the groove, and also all the small little details and important things that I think really matter to make sure you have a really nice groove. So to start off, here is the sound. All right, so it's quite simple. It's already, I think that for if you want to get something to be groovy and to sound good, it already needs to sound good like this in its simplest form. And there is a couple of things that you can do to make sure that this sounds good. Obviously, the length of the samples matters. So one thing that I'm doing with the kick here as well is the second kick is a lot shorter and it is a lot more faded in on the transient, so it just doesn't sound as strong as the first one, which is kind of like setting the main beat. Also, the snare isn't very transient heavy, so I don't want a super transient heavy kick, super clicky kick, and then a snare that doesn't have a lot of transient, because then our ears will perceive all that difference in dynamics. So like something called like perceivable dynamics will be a lot more different, and you want something that makes sense. What makes a good what makes a squashed drum loop sound good is the fact that everything is squashed, so you get away with it. But if you have a super clean, like the new era techie type stuff, super clean, super sharp transients type thing, and if the kick doesn't stand up to how hard the transient on the snare is, then your ears are going to pick up on that and the kick's not going to sound that good. So in the end, it's all about the context. In music, it's always about the context. We could talk about this for hours. Even like stuff out of tune isn't really ever out of tune because it depends where you put it. It's like super weird chords can sound super weird, but if you put it at the end of a chord progression and then you resolve it into something good, it's not weird anymore. So it's all about the context. And so you can see that my kick is a little bit faded in on the transient, just because it's too clicky compared to the snare. It's very, so I just fade it in. It's still a bit clicky. It might need a little bit more EQing to make sure it's perfect, but I just wanted to get like a nice, simple, like real practical example of something that would happen instead of already being too surgical about it, or else, all the work is done. So yeah, and then also the snare. You might not be able to see like this, but if I create a duplicate, you can see that the first snare is a little bit longer than the second. So this is the first, it's a copy of that. You can see this one starts to fade out later. This one starts a lot earlier, and it's already like this at half of the beat. So the second snare is a little bit shorter, and that already kind of changes the tone and the way that we perceive it. It's kind of like the first one is open and the second one is closed. We can even make that a little bit more obvious. So, pa, pa, kind of thing. There you go. There you go. So that already immensely helps the groove and helps the drum loop make sense. And then the hat, just a simple hat. short hat, a little bit of sidechain on the kick. And then here's when you can start adding stuff to make this sound better. Obviously, I'm not going to use all of this at the same time. I'm just going to show you a couple of different examples. So this first one is just another hat. Sounds like this. And it's an open hat. And you can see the second one is also shorter than the first one. You can see the fade in differences. This one, the fade out. This one fades out a lot earlier. That's just because I want to make the first beat more obvious than the half beat. And then just kind of use this as a layer to the main hat. There you go. So we can even use another one. Like this. Just kind of feels like it makes that main hat sound a little bit longer where it really isn't. It's just a clever way of using layers, and very careful about the levels. But let's mute these guys now. And then another thing that you can use is the ghost snares. So a lot of people just use the ghost snares like their snare like this sometimes. Nothing wrong with that. I just kind of don't really like to do it like that. I like to make it sound like acoustically normal or natural, or just like how a drummer would do it. And the drummer would play the ghost snares normally. Obviously there's situations where the ghost snare like this makes sense, you know, on bigger drum loops and like bigger sounding drum loops and all of that, just because the drummer will hit the snare with the same strength as he hits it on the main beat. So the ghost snare will sound just like the normal snare, but on this case it doesn't. And what I did was I just recorded the snare. So this first one, okay, or whatever snare works, you could use the shorter one or the first one. And then what I did, obviously I kind of fade it in and get it a little bit offbeat, and then a little bit of fade out. And then another thing that's very essential, because if the drummer is hitting the snare with a less strength, the snare is just going to resonate differently, you know. So you can see how this one. So one thing that you can do is you could just come over here, search for like the main resonance of the snare, take it off. You can do that with another one, maybe like this one. It's already kind of sounding lower pitched, not ringing that much, and you can do that with others as well. And you can obviously kind of detune it down a little bit. And then you obviously need to kind of find the right volume and the right timings and all of that. So let's just hear kick, snare, and hat. Yeah, this one's kind of cool. So yeah, this is normally how I would go about building the ghost hits. You know, we could just do it the whole thing like this. And then I think if you're doing something like this, it kind of needs to be different, the two hits. I'm not a drummer, but I would think that naturally maybe the first one will be a lot lighter than the second, because he is hitting that ghost hit, and he knows he's gonna have to hit it again, so it will take, like, like the rims will take it off quicker, so it probably will hit it a little bit lighter. So something like this maybe. I think it's very key as well to kind of think of how, if you want to make it groovy and sounding natural and all that, I think it's very important to think how a real drummer would do it, just deconstruct some funk breaks. I'm telling you, that will help a lot. So yeah, so far we've got this. That's cool. We can take this off and I can show you other things that you can add, kind of like a ghost shaker hit. This guy is barely doing anything. I can even deactivate this one. We don't need this one. It's just about the shaker. It's there, but it's almost like it isn't. You can definitely feel that something's there. But do your ears pay too much attention to it in the middle of it all? It's just kind of giving you a feel, rather like a dragging feel, because it's a little bit late rather than anything else. You can either repeat it every bar, you can do like a question answer type thing, whereas this first bar you have it and the second one you don't. So yeah, let's remove these ghost hits now, and let's move on to other stuff. I'm not going to touch on this crushed hat, just the crushed hat on the first beat. Now, moving on, the first thing that you can try and do is addictive drums, just some real hats. Obviously, this gives you a much different feel than this. The idea here is that the offbeat is lower in volume. So it just sounds natural and sounds like it's dragging. Love it. Very simple. Nothing really too crazy going on here. Just making sure the right timings are correct. Then obviously you could try different hats. Different levels and all that, but it's quite simple. Just make sure the offbeat is a little bit lower if you want to go for this type of sound. And then on Serum, just make one bar long note for white noise. A little bit of high pass. And then an LFO, that's with the rate set to a bar, so it resets every bar, controlling the level. And then you can see the same thing applies here. I can kind of like try and zoom it in. So you can see that there's a little fade in on every beat. So it's not, so it doesn't have like a strong trend, it's faded in every time. And the very short offbeat really help the groove. Nice. I mean, if I gate those hits, it's gonna sound so different. as you can see. And like this, it just gives it a little bit of, you know. And cool thing about gating is you can set the floor level. So let's bring those hats back up. So you can even further dive into more experimentation with the levels and all that. And one thing that I like to do with this, it's kind of like one of my favorite tricks for the hat sound, is just crush it like this. So now they're super funky, very, very short. They're barely there. They're just kind of like giving you the feel, kind of like this shaker here. Amazing. Cool. And then obviously you can also sample hats from funk breaks and do the same thing. Open, closed, open, closed, open, closed, open, closed. It works. And I'm doing the same thing here. Obviously, open hat every now and then really helps. Let's try and have this one here, and we can just copy this and put it here. Okay. Yeah. So now we're creating this kind of groove where it goes t-t, t-t-t. Nice. If I make this one shorter and louder, yeah, the groove starts to become more apparent. So it's all about, you know, finding the right levels, timings. I like this one. Maybe we could do it like this. I guess it kind of answers better. Nice. And then just to wrap it up, I've got a little noise hit to put on the first beat because I think that's also very, very good. And this could be anything, you know, just white noise that you mess around with. Just find a certain tone. This could be literally anything, like resamples of Atmos, textures. And I guess that's pretty much it for groove and all of that. Experiment with 8th notes, 16th notes. Levels are very important, and the amount, like how large things are and for how long they play, like decay times, basically, which is what I'm doing with the fades, and serum and all of that, with the little fades and all of that. So decay times, they really matter, and sustain levels as well, like how long does it sustain for and all of that. It's so important, because these are things that are very important for drums. When the drummer is playing, if you want to get like a funky groove or something a bit more groovy, you have to play it differently. So the decay times of the sounds of the individual hits and the sustain times and all of that, they will be different. So there's a lot of different ways of playing the drums and all of that. And also don't forget what I mentioned in the beginning, like with the transients and all of that. It can really change the way that you perceive a drum loop. And yeah, hopefully you'll practice this and end up with something that you like and enjoy. Nice one. I hope that was helpful and cool for you, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.